Bloatware, also known as crapware, is a term used to describe undesirable software that actively uses up your device's resources. Have you ever bought a brand new laptop, smartphone, or even a pre-built PC? If you have, then you've probably encountered bloatware, and chances are you may not even be aware of its existence. Bloatware almost always comes pre-installed with any new computer or phone. Most of the time, it's completely harmless and only takes up a negligible amount of space on your device. Sometimes, though, it can actively slow down your system by launching its startup and running in the background without your knowledge. Manufacturers install bloatware on their devices mostly because companies pay them to do so. They're usually trial versions of software that you may or may not find useful, such as an antivirus or a media player. This serves as advertising for the developers because once your trial expires, it'll repeatedly pop up and ask if you'd like to buy it. Sometimes, they won't even wait until the trial expires, which is much worse. At this point, you're probably wondering how to get rid of bloatware. Well, there's lots of ways to remove them from your system, depending on what device you're using. Let's go through a few options to consider. Let's start off with computers. First of all, if you've built your own PC, then you probably don't have to worry about bloatware. If you own a pre-built PC though, then there's a huge chance that you have a bunch of useless programs installed on it. The simplest way to fix this problem is to manually remove them one by one. It's a tedious process, but it's easy and it works. All you have to do in this case is open up the control panel and select Programs and Features. From here, just look for the programs that you would consider to be bloatware and uninstall them. If you don't want to do that because you're worried that you might accidentally uninstall something that's actually useful or essential, then you can download something like PC Decrapifier. This program is a free tool that scans your computer for potentially unnecessary software. After it's done analyzing your system, it'll make recommendations based on what other users usually remove. PC Decrapifier even shows you which programs are either questionable in terms of essentiality or just straight up not recommended for removal. You might still have to do your own research on what some of these programs are though. Either way, it'll help you make a more informed decision on what you should keep or uninstall. Another option you have is to completely reinstall your operating system. This mostly applies to Windows users, and it may not be the best course of action. It will ensure that you have a clean system afterwards though. The main downside to this is that you might also have to reinstall drivers for your hardware, and it may take more time than it's worth. Now, if you're on mobile, removing bloatware is going to be a little more difficult. For starters, most manufacturers, and sometimes carriers, fill their devices with dozens of pre-installed apps. The problem with these is that the majority of them are barely useful for the average user. A good example of these is Apple's stocks and pretty much the majority of Google's pre-installed apps on Android devices. Unfortunately, most of these just cannot be uninstalled normally and may actually do more harm than good when removed. If you do insist though, there are a few ways you can remove bloatware on mobile. You can start by checking each app to see if it can be removed normally. How this works will depend on your phone. Basically, if you get the option to uninstall something, then go for it. If you don't, then this is where it gets complicated. In most cases, you may have to jailbreak or root your device, which is not something we recommend unless you absolutely know what you're doing. If you really want to remove bloatware from your phone, then we recommend that you go online and look for a guide for your specific device. Alternatively, if you're an Android user, you can disable apps through the settings menu. All you have to do is go to your settings and look for applications or apps. From here, it's as easy as choosing an app from the list and just tapping on the disable button. This won't free up space, but it can potentially speed up your phone and help extend battery life. Overall, removing bloatware can be very frustrating, and sometimes it isn't worth the effort. This is something that most people will just have to deal with for now, since it's highly unlikely that companies will stop shipping devices riddled with such software.